If you listen to some of the greatest guitarists and soloists of all time, one thing you'll start to notice is not only are they able to flow effortlessly between pentatonic positions, but they're also able to blend the sounds of major and minor pentatonic scales with ease. This skill is an amazing benchmark for us to shoot for as improvisers, and in this lesson I'm going to show you a really simple way to practice this and put it to work. Okay, to set this all up, we'll do it in 4 simple steps. The first step is going to be to take the B string and E string and map out the major pentatonic in all 5 positions. The second step is to do the same process but with the minor pentatonic, and what we're going to come to find out is it's the same thing as the major pentatonic, just starting in a different place. The third step is to do the same process but in each position of the pentatonic, we're going to do both the major and the minor in each area and see how they can blend together. The fourth and final step is going to be to then apply these concepts to playing over a track, and we'll use Stormy Monday, the Allman Brothers version from the Fillmore East, as our backdrop and see if we can come up with some really cool ideas blending the major and minor pentatonic. To set up the major pentatonic patterns, what we're going to do is again use the B string and the E string, and even though I'm going to have you start with open strings here, let's pretend like we're actually fretting it, and it'll help with seeing how the patterns kind of transfer as we use the minor pentatonic in a minute. So we'll go like this. To create the wider box shape, we're going to go open, 3, open, 3. Then for the next position, go to the 3rd fret, and we're going to do kind of the narrow box and go like this. As we move up to the next position, I'm going to call this pattern the 3x2. And what I mean by that is we're going to go 3 frets up, and then go to the next string, go 2 frets up, like that. So 3 frets up, 2 frets up. For the next position, we'll call it the 2x3. So we go 2 up from where we start, and then 3 up from where we start. So it's kind of the mirrored image of the other one. As we move up a little higher, we're back to this kind of narrow box shape. Now for the next position, we're going to have this wider box shape, which is actually just like what we did down here. And this is why I had you, for now, pretend like you're actually fretting those open strings so it looks the same when you get up here. And then let's take it one position higher. We're going to go up to the 15th fret and do the narrow box. Like that. Let's play that all in order, and I'm going to set the metronome to 60 beats per minute, counting 8th notes. So 1 and 2 and ready and. To set up the minor pentatonic, this is one way you can think of it. Every time you do G minor pentatonic, you're actually going to be 1 position back from what you did for G major pentatonic. So now I'm actually going to have you start on the 3rd fret, and let's recap the major pentatonic position right here. It went like this. It was the narrow box, like that. Now, if you can remember, I had you start here pretending like you were fretting the open strings. Okay, so we had this wider box shape. Well, that's the one that we're going to start with in the minor pentatonic version. So when the major pentatonic is doing this, the minor pentatonic is like 1 pattern back from where we started, like that. Now, as we move up, for the major pentatonic, I called this the 3x2. If you remember that, well now, think of this minor pentatonic pattern as 1 back from where we just were. So for the major pentatonic, we did the narrow box, and now we're going to do that same thing for the minor pentatonic in this position. Now as we move up another position, for major pentatonic, I called this the 2x3. So 2 frets, 3 frets. But think about it, the last thing we did for major pentatonic was the 3x2, and that's what we're going to do now for minor pentatonic in the same position. So we go 3 up, 2 up, And as we move along, remember that the major pentatonic up here was going to be the narrow box like this. So now we're one position back when we do the minor pentatonic, or one pattern back, and that's going to be the 2x3. So 2 frets up and then 3 frets up. As we move up a little higher, the major pentatonic had us going like this, wide box. Now we're going to do the narrow box because we're one behind when we do the minor pentatonic. Like that. And then we're back where we started. Here's the narrow box for major pentatonic. And the minor will be the wider box. Now we're going to map that all out at 60 beats per minute, counting eighth notes, just like we did for the major pentatonic. And I'm going to have you start at the 3rd fret position with the wider box shape. So here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and. For our 3rd step, we're going to go through all 5 positions, doing major and then minor pentatonic, and we'll just progressively move up until we get an octave up from where we started. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. For the 4th and final step here, we're going to put all this stuff to use and play it against the track. So we're going to use Stormy Monday. And one thing I should explain real quick is the entire reason that we're switching between major and minor pentatonic is because when you play a blues, you're oftentimes coming across dominant chords, which are chords that have a flat 7 interval. And in this context, we're doing a G blues. So the G major pentatonic works really beautifully against the G chord because in that pentatonic pattern, there is going to be the note B, which is the major 3rd of G. So everything is compatible and works really nicely. But then when we go to play against the 4 chord, for example, which in this scenario is going to be a C7 chord, or it might be a C9 chord, you're going to have a B flat in that chord voicing. And the sound of that B natural coming from the G major pentatonic against the C7 that has the B flat creates this really kind of nasty dissonance. And dissonance can actually be cool if we do it in certain contexts and do it in a certain kind of way. But in this scenario, it'll end up sounding kind of sour and not good. So what we do, instead of playing the G major pentatonic, we just switch to G minor pentatonic. And that gives us a B flat because the minor 3rd of G is B flat. And that same B flat that's the minor 3rd of G is the flat 7 interval of C. So even if all that didn't quite make sense or sink in fully, it's all good. Like, just think of it like this. For a simple rule of thumb, when you play over the 1 chord, try major or minor pentatonic. So if you're doing a G blues, G major or G minor pentatonic. We're going to keep it major though for now. But then when you go over the 4 chord, switch to G minor pentatonic. And this will help make the scale and the chord more compatible with each other. On the 5 chord, sometimes you can go either way with it. Just kind of experiment and see what you like. So without further ado, here's Stormy Monday. I'm going to blend major and minor pentatonic. to leave you with a couple last thoughts here to dig into for your own practice. And the main thing I want to say is that I would recommend getting to know each area in detail. So things like, is there a note you like to bend up or down? Is there a note you like to slide into? Where are the spots you like to switch between major and minor? Is there a certain finger you like to use to slide into a different position? All these kind of things really add up to creating fluidity in your playing, which I think is a really high goal to set up. So, for example, if we're down here in the 3rd fret area with the major pentatonic, so we've got this little shape here, this narrow box. But what can we do with that? We can, bend into this note, or you can bend this note. Maybe you pre-bend, or like I just did there, you can grab a little bit of the B string. That's a really cool sound too. So right there, just a lot of stuff you can play with when you go to the minor pentatonic. Similarly, maybe you slide into the notes. And here again, there's a nice opportunity for a bend. That's a great spot to bend. So every single area has its own stuff to offer. If we're up here in the next area, I was really liking the sound of sliding into this E and then create little themes, little motifs. Then for the minor pentatonic, you've got a nice opportunity for a bend up here. And another thing to think about too is, even though we're doing minor pentatonic, one thing I've noticed about some of my favorite players, from Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, David Gilmour, Trey Anastasio, John Mayer, all these players, a lot of times when they play the minor third, they bend up just slightly sharp so that there's a little tiny bit of majorness to it. So for example, right here in this minor pentatonic, you hear that little, it's a subtle bend, but it really adds a lot. It's kind of a secret sauce to the whole thing. As we move up here, we've got this position toward the 8th fret. And when I listen to Dwayne Allman play on Stormy Monday, one thing I noticed here is it seems like he's using his index finger on the 8th fret and doing a bend on the 10th fret of the E string, and then a bend on 10 of B as well. It's a really good idea to listen to the greats of all time and see what kind of phrases do they do. What's their language? And then we can borrow some of that and then make it our own, and then kind of jumble it up, switch things around, and you'll get your own sound happening that way. And as we move up, we were up in this major pentatonic zone. And again, you could do a little half bend. That's kind of a fun sound. Now for the minor pentatonic, again here, you could use your index finger on 11, and then that's an easier way to do the bend here. And again, you can do a bend up, and then a little bit of major on that minor third. And then here's another great bend. Let's move along. Up here, again, I just love the sound of sliding into the major 6, which in this case is an E. Or a bend up here. Then I did a little double stop in the playthrough a second ago, where instead of doing a lick here, I was just playing it like this. That's a classic little blues move where you slide a semitone under and then up into that. It's just a minor third interval, doing a D minor interval. So there's a D here and an F, and you just kind of slide in. And then maybe do a little lick there, and then we're back where we started. And I brought it down to a D at the end because the chord is a D 7 sharp 9, or sometimes they do an augmented chord there. So that really is compatible with that last chord. The main point here is to experiment, play around with stuff, try to bend up to a note, pre-bend and go down to a note, slide into it, all kinds of stuff. Literally try to break it apart and put it back together again, and that's half of the fun. Thank you so much for watching the lesson. Don't forget to hit subscribe and hit the like button, and I'll see you soon on the next one.